everybody, this is Angela and Nick from Imagine Eating, and today we're going to show you how to make the breakfast bread from Ohana.
Yeah, this is a really, really great bread. It's got a little bit of coconut, a little bit of pineapple. It's absolutely delicious and something you can totally make at home very, very easily, actually.
It's a tasty treat, and I can't wait to show you guys how to make it.
Alright, so we're going to start by putting some water into our stand mixer, warm water, and then putting in yeast, just to go ahead and kind of bloom that yeast a little bit.
It gets nice and bubbly and frothy. Well, not nice, but definitely bubbly and frothy.
Yeah, this is really just making sure that your yeast are alive. So I'm just giving that a little bit of a stir. Now, we do have the recipe provided in the description below. We made a few changes to the order of the allears.net recipe just to kind of make it a little bit easier to work with. So what we've done here, we've got the yeast in the water, but now we're adding some of our flour, about half of our flour. We're making kind of a poolish so we can incorporate all of the different ingredients and make it a little bit easier for this whole dough to come together.
It's called a poolish?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Where you have kind of like a really wet version of the dough, but doesn't have all the dry ingredients in there yet.
Well, that's not foolish at all.
Haha! Alright, so we got some shortening going in there, and we're just going to give this a little bit of a mix after we have our shortening in, and really just kind of bring everything together. We're going to use the paddle attachment here at the beginning, just to kind of incorporate all the ingredients.
And we've edited this to speed up for time. Things like blooming the yeast are going to take some time, and for all the dough to come together, that's going to take some time too.
Alright, so we're just giving this a mix, like I said, to kind of get those ingredients incorporated. It's going to make it easier for everything to come together after the fact. A lot of the recipes I've seen for this bread just require you to dump everything in. I don't really like that, because it's just a little bit more technique-y if you kind of go about it this way.
That's the official word for it, right?
Exactly, yes.
So that was some egg that went in?
Yes, it was. A little egg yolk. By the way, Takniki is the Polynesian god of bread.
So now you're adding in that other half of the flour?
Yep, the rest of the flour goes in. And now we're going to kind of switch our tactics up a little bit. We put the other half of the flour in. Now we're going to put our dough hook attachment on our stand mixer, and we're going to get this to come together.
Come together.
Alright, so now you see that we've got our dough hook and we're going to bring that together. I'm starting it on a relatively low speed, but then you can always pick it up as you get this dough coming together. And really what's going to happen here is it's going to knead that dough, it's going to form it into a dough ball, and eventually it's going to peel away from the side of the bowl. And you can see I just turned the speed up there. Now it's forming that dough. This is going to take probably about 3 minutes or so, and it'll eventually come together. It'll pick up that residual dough that's on the side of the bowl, and should form into a nice dough ball.
That's how I feel before I get my beach body.
Alright, so after we have that in there, you can see that the dough is kind of now nice and taut. And we can go ahead and take this and cover it for it to rise. I'm just going to kind of form it into a very loose ball here, nothing too crazy. You could roll it out if you want to and make a dough ball, but I'm just going to kind of keep it in there pretty loose. Cover it with a tea towel and let it rise for about an hour.
So one thing that took me by surprise with this bread is that it's got some stuff in it.
It does, and this is the stuff right here. We've got some crushed pineapple going into one bowl. Now, I'm using a cup of crushed pineapple here, but you notice there's a little bit of juice in the bottom? I don't want that in there because water is bad news for dough, so I'm going to drain that a little bit and now add the coconut. So now we've got crushed pineapple and coconut in one bowl. The other bowl is going to have some sugar and cornstarch. I know that's a white bowl, and those are two white things that I'm putting in that white bowl, but believe it or not, they are actually in there. And to be honest, I don't know if this step is fully necessary to separate these two things, but it's what the recipe called for, and that's kind of what we followed here. But this is also similar to when you make a blueberry pie with cornstarch. When those blueberries start to kind of cook out, that cornstarch helps thicken up that juice that comes out of the blueberry.
That's true, that's true. We also use 2 small bowls here, but we recommend using like 1 medium-sized bowl and a small bowl.
Exactly, because it just makes it a little bit easier to mix things in. I think we always tend to, in the kitchen, sometimes use things that are too small for mixing. So if you got a big bowl, use it. Who cares if you have to clean it?
So you're just mixing that cornstarch and sugar?
Yeah, and then eventually we're going to take these and bring them both together, and that's going to be our coconut pineapple mixture that's going to really serve as the stuffing for the bread. Alright, so now we've got all of that combined. Again, that is coconut, pineapple, cornstarch, and sugar. And I'm just going to take a fork and bring all that together. You want to stir this really, really well. You want to incorporate all of those ingredients. And I'm just going to give it a very firm kind of whisking with a fork. We also adjusted the recipe for this mixture because it called for a full cup of sugar. We used about half a cup because it's just too much sugar in that recipe, just way too much, and it's unnecessary. Plus, we were using sweetened coconut, and the recipe I think called for unsweetened coconut, so we cut that down a little bit.
Yeah, and I can tell you from eating the end product that extra sugar is really not needed.
Absolutely. So there's our dough after its 1 hour rise. You can see more than doubled in size. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flour our work surface, we're going to turn that dough out, and then we're going to bust out our rolling pin. If I can get the dough out of the bowl. Still trying. There we go. Alright, so we're going to flour the top of that, we're going to bust out our rolling pin, and we're going to just kind of roll this out. Ideally, I was aiming for rolling this into a rectangular shape. I did not do that. You can tell I make a lot of pizza based off of the shape that I rolled this into, but ideally I was trying to go for a rectangular shape here. I did not do that at all.
You went rustic.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. When you make a mistake in the kitchen, just call it rustic. Anything that involves shapes or cuts or things like that. If you cut vegetables too large, it's rustic. So now we've got that rolled out into what is clearly a rectangle, and I'm going to take some of that pineapple coconut mixture, and I'm just going to drop it right on there. I don't want to go to the edges with it, because I'm going to need to roll this back onto itself, but you want to make sure you spread it out nicely here.
Now, how much mixture should they be putting in the center?
That's a great question, because we actually use about 3/4 of it here. We're going to reserve 1/4 of that mixture for a little bit later on down the line. That is going to be something that will reward you greatly if you do so. This is actually very much like putting sauce on a pizza here. You just want to be patient with it, and this is also a point where getting that extra water out of the pineapple was really, really helpful, because you don't have, like, drippage running down the dough and then causing the dough to kind of lose some of its stickiness. And this is just kind of like you're folding a burrito here. You're just going to fold one side onto itself, then the other side on top of that. You can fold those end caps in on each other as well, just to make it a little bit easier to work with. You see the dough kind of sticking to the board here. I'm just using a little bit of flour to clean that up.
It's so cute.
It is. It's kind of like a big pineapple coconut burrito.
I feel like we should make that next. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
I'd be down for that. So now that we've got that in there, you want to take the rolling pin and not using too much force. You want to roll this out till it kind of meets the width and length of your pan as best you can. The reason you don't want to push too hard is you got a lot of liquid in there, and you don't want to just push it out of the seams of the dough. So you want to be a little bit delicate with the rolling pin, but you want to try to get it flat.
So the recipe calls for this kind of pan, right? What were the measurements?
9 by 13. 13 by 9. And yeah, it's just dropping it in there. We've sprayed this with some cooking spray, and now we're just kind of getting the dough into the pan. and just kind of spreading it out. But we're not done yet because we do need to proof this. One thing that you want to do when you have it in there is take a knife and kind of score it. You want to kind of cut it. The recipe says to use a pizza cutter. You can use a knife, anything sharp. You don't necessarily have to portion it out, but it does help to kind of go ahead and score this dough.
Now, for beginners like me, when you score, how deep do you want to press?
You want to go pretty deep here. You don't want to go all the way through the dough, but you want to make sure you get it pretty deep. Also, if anything oozes out, you want to make sure that you just kind of cover up your work.
Gotcha.
So now that goes into the oven at 325 for 20 minutes. Here we're pulling it out after about 20 minutes, and we're adding that final quarter of the pineapple coconut mixture just to kind of glaze it. Then you put it back in the oven for another 15 to 20 minutes, and boom, there you are.
So good.
And now we're going to transfer that onto a cookie sheet, and I'll cut into it so you guys can see what this looks like on the inside. It's really, really delicious. This bread came out perfect. I know it looks a little bit pale on top. You can keep this under the broiler. You can keep it in the oven. I just didn't want to overcook it because the inside is perfectly done. Plus, that little extra pineapple coconut glaze really makes it nice and sticky on top, too.
You can see where that coconut and pineapple is inside.
Yeah, so you get that about halfway through and then you get it again on top. Really kind of balances this bread out.
Yep. And there you have it. Delicious, smells amazing, tastes amazing. Guys, thank you so much for watching.